Across the vast expanse of the galaxy, where 1,000 different species vie for power, resources, and survival, there exists one universal truth that every civilization has learned to accept. Loyalty is a luxury few can afford. In the cold mathematics of interstellar politics, alliances shift like cosmic dust, treaties crumble faster than dying stars, and trust is nothing more than a temporary convenience. The Galactic Council has operated on this principle for over 3 millennia. Betrayal is not just expected, it's considered good business. Species rise and fall based on their ability to abandon yesterday's allies for tomorrow's advantages. It's a system that works, they say. It's practical. It's survival. But then humanity arrived, and everything the galaxy thought it knew about loyalty, honor, and the true meaning of strength was about to be shattered forever. What happens when a species that values loyalty above all else, even above their own survival, enters a galaxy that has forgotten what the word even means? What happens when beings who would rather die than break their word encounter civilizations built on the foundation of convenient betrayal? The answer would reshape the very fabric of galactic civilization itself. This is the story of how humanity's greatest weakness became the galaxy's most terrifying strength. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the human diplomatic vessel Endeavour, watching as the massive Galactic Council station grew larger through the reinforced viewport. After 200 years of careful observation from the edge of known space, humanity was finally ready to announce itself to the galaxy. The station was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel of metal and energy that housed representatives from over 800 different species. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Paul. Marcus Webb, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, as he joined her at the window. Sarah smiled, though her eyes remained fixed on their destination. "Excited. This is what we've worked toward our entire lives. First contact with a galactic civilization." What neither of them knew was that their arrival had already been detected, discussed, and dismissed by the Council's security forces. Humanity's ships, while advanced by their own standards, appeared primitive to galactic eyes. The Council had seen dozens of species like this before. Young, eager civilizations that thought they were ready for the vastness of space. Most lasted less than a decade before being absorbed, conquered, or simply vanishing into the dark between stars. The Endeavour docked at one of the station's smaller bays, the kind reserved for minor delegations and unimportant visitors. Sarah led her team of 12 through the airlock, their environmental suits humming softly as they adjusted to the station's atmosphere. The first thing that struck her was the sheer diversity of life forms moving through the corridors. Beings of crystalline gas, creatures that seemed to be made of living metal, and others so alien that her mind struggled to process their forms. Their guide was a Zelthrian, a tall blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like amber stars. "I am Coordinator Vex-Ra," it said through a universal translator. "The Council has allocated 30 standard minutes for your preliminary presentation." 30 minutes. Sarah had prepared for hours of discussion, detailed negotiations about trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. But she maintained her diplomatic composure as they were led through a maze of corridors to a small conference room that smelled of ozone and something unpleasantly sweet. Seated around the curved table were 5 beings representing different council factions. Sarah recognized them from her briefings: the militaristic Korth Empire, the trade-focused hegemony of Suns, the ancient and mysterious Void Collective, the religious Eternal Chorus, and the technological synthesis network. "Humans," said the Korth representative, its voice like grinding stone through the translator. "We have reviewed your basic capabilities. Your technology is adequate. Your military force is minimal. Your resources are limited. What exactly do you offer the Council?" Sarah had expected this question. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system, highlighting their technological achievements, their peaceful history since global unification, and their vast potential for growth. But before she could speak, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Council emergency," announced an automated voice. "All delegates to emergency positions. Hostile fleet detected in Sector 779. Estimated arrival in 4 standard hours." The Council representatives immediately began arguing among themselves in various languages, but the translation system made their panic clear. The approaching fleet belonged to the Devourers, a nomadic species that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of all biological and mineral resources before moving on to the next target. "The defense fleet cannot arrive in time," said the synthesis representative, its mechanical voice somehow conveying urgency. "We require immediate evacuation of all civilian populations in the target zone." "Impossible," replied the hegemony delegate. Our transport capacity cannot handle the numbers involved. 3 billion beings on 17 different worlds. Sarah listened to the growing argument with growing horror. They were talking about abandoning billions of innocent lives because evacuation was inconvenient. The cold mathematics of their decision-making process became clear as different factions began calculating which worlds were worth saving and which weren't. The Kepler system must be prioritized, insisted the Eternal Chorus representative. The sacred sites cannot be lost. Negative, countered the court delegate. Military installations take precedence. Civilian populations are replaceable. What about the mining colonies? Asked the hegemony representative. The economic impact of losing those facilities. Dr. Giberio. Webb leaned close to Sarah. They're actually debating which entire civilizations to abandon, he whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't how she had imagined her first diplomatic mission would go. But as she listened to the council delegates argue over logistics and resource allocation, treating the lives of billions as mere numbers in their calculations, she realized something fundamental about galactic civilization. They had no concept of what humanity would consider basic moral obligation. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the debate. The alien representatives turned to look at her with expressions she couldn't read but somehow felt were dismissive. "Yes," said Coordinator Vexra. "Do you have relevant input regarding evacuation logistics?" "What if we help?" Sarah asked. "My ship has advanced shield technology and our crew has experience with emergency evacuation procedures. We could assist with the rescue operations." The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah could hear the hum of the station's environmental systems. Finally, the court representative made a sound that the translator rendered as bitter laughter. "Your single primitive vessel? Against the Devourer fleet? You would sacrifice yourselves and your entire species for populations you have never met? For people who aren't even your allies?" "They're people," Sarah said simply. "That's enough." The council delegates exchanged looks that needed no translation. They were dealing with either the most naive species they had ever encountered, or the most foolishly suicidal. "Your vessel would not survive the first engagement with Devourer forces," said the synthesis representative with mechanical certainty. "Your crew would be consumed along with the populations you attempt to rescue. This would serve no logical purpose." Essera looked at her team. "Doctor." Webb nodded slowly. "Commander Torres." Their ship's captain straightened his shoulders. Lieutenant Morrison, their communications officer, was already checking her equipment. Even Dr. Yuki, their youngest team member, met Sarah's eyes with steady resolve. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about logic," Sarah replied. "Sometimes it's about who you choose to be when everything is falling apart." She activated her communicator, Chen, to Endeavor. "Commander Torres, prepare the ship for immediate departure. We have a rescue mission." "Understood, Ambassador," came Torres's voice over the comm. "How many ships are we coordinating with?" Sarah looked at the council representatives, who were staring at her with expressions she was beginning to recognize as shock. "Just us, Commander." "Just us." The Endeavor undocked from the council station 43 minutes later, its crew of 96 humans heading directly toward a sector where billions of beings were about to die, and where a fleet of world-eating monsters was waiting for them. Behind them, in the council chambers, an emergency session was being called for the first time in 300 years. "They actually left," said the hegemony representative, its voice filled with something that might have been wonder. "Suicide," stated the Korth delegate flatly. "Primitive and illogical." But Coordinator Vexra was studying the energy readings from the departed human vessel. "They're shield frequencies," it said slowly. "I've never seen anything like them. And their power core, it's generating more energy than should be possible from a ship that size." "Irrelevant," said the synthesis representative. "Probability of survival, less than 0.001%. In the depths of space, the Endeavor pushed its engines to maximum burn, racing against time and physics itself to reach the Kepler system before the Devourers arrived. Captain Torres had plotted a course that would strain their hull to its limits, but it was the only way to get there in time." "Sarah," Dr. Webb said quietly as they watched the stars blur past at dangerous speeds, "what's our actual plan here? I mean, I support the mission, but we're one ship against a fleet that consumes worlds." Sarah was studying the tactical display, her mind working through possibilities. "We're not going to fight them, Marcus. We're going to do something they won't expect." "Which is, save everyone." The Endeavor dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system 18 hours later, just as the first Devourer scouts were beginning their approach to the inhabited worlds. The human ship was immediately detected by both sides, the panicking populations below and the methodical hunters above. Captain Torres opened communications to all planets in the system simultaneously. This is Captain Elena Torres of the Earth vessel Endeavour. We're here to help with evacuation procedures. Please prepare your populations for immediate transport. The responses came back in dozens of different languages, but the translators made the confusion clear. A single alien ship offering to evacuate billions? It was either a hoax or madness. But Sarah had one advantage that no one in the galaxy expected. She told the truth. We know it sounds impossible, she broadcasted to every communication frequency in the system. We know we're just one ship, and we know we're strangers to you. But we have technology that can save your people. You're going to have to trust us. On the fourth planet, a Kepler colony administrator named Zerkel was staring at his communication display in disbelief. They want us to trust them? These unknown aliens want us to put our children on their ship? His aide, a younger Zelthrian named Tixna, was monitoring the approach of the Devourer fleet. Sir, the Devourers will be here in 6 hours. The Council has officially designated this system as lost. No rescue fleet is coming. Zerkel looked at the energy readings from the human ship. Whatever their technology was, it was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Contact them directly. I want to speak to their leader. Sarah's face appeared on the colony's main screen minutes later. To the Zelthrians, she looked impossibly young for a commander. Her features soft and expression open in ways that suggested either complete honesty or masterful deception. Administrator Zerkel, Sarah said, I know you have no reason to trust us. We're a species you've never heard of, offering to do something that seems impossible. But I want you to know something about humans. When we give our word, we keep it, no matter the cost. Zerkel had dealt with dozens of species over his long career, but something in this human's voice made him pause. There was a quality there he couldn't identify, something that spoke to instincts buried deep in his evolutionary past. Even if what you say is true, he replied, your ship cannot possibly hold our population. We have over 40 million beings on this world alone. Sarah smiled, and in that expression, Zerkel saw something that made his breath catch. It wasn't the smile of someone who was lying or desperate. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. Administrator, you're about to see why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars. The Endeavour descended toward the fourth planet with a grace that defied its apparent bulk, but what happened next shattered every assumption the galaxy had about physics, engineering, and the limits of what was possible. As the ship entered the planet's atmosphere, sections of its hull began to unfold. Not like mechanical panels or modular components, but like living tissue growing and expanding. The vessel's exterior rippled and flowed, extending outward in impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. What in the name of the void is happening? Gasped Administrator Zerkel, as he watched the human ship transform above his city. The Endeavour was revealing its true nature. What the galaxy had assumed was a primitive starship was actually something far more advanced than any technology in Council records. The hull continued expanding, creating vast caverns of space that seemed to exist in dimensions that normal physics couldn't account for. The ship's interior was growing exponentially larger than its exterior envelope, violating every known law of spatial mechanics. Dr. Wei Lu, the Endeavour's chief physicist, was monitoring the transformation from the bridge. Fold space generators at full capacity, she reported to Captain Torres. We've got enough internal volume now to accommodate 50 million beings, with life support systems adapting in real time. Captain Torres nodded grimly. Time until Devourer arrival? 4 hours, 30 to 7 minutes, replied Lieutenant Morrison from her sensor station. And Captain, they've detected our transformation. The lead Devourer ship is accelerating toward us. Sarah stepped onto the bridge, her diplomatic composure replaced by the focused intensity of someone coordinating the impossible. Have the other planets agreed to evacuation?
7 out of 17 worlds have accepted our offer, reported Dr. Broadband.
Webb. The others are hesitant. Sarah understood their hesitation. What humanity was offering seemed too good to be true, and in galactic politics, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. But they didn't have time for extended negotiations. Open communications to all 17 worlds simultaneously, she ordered. Her image appeared on screens across the Kepler system, in government buildings, refugee centers, family homes, and military installations. Billions of beings from a dozen different species found themselves looking at the face of a human for the first time. People of the Kepler system, Sarah began. her voice carried by every communication satellite and broadcast system in the region. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering what we want from you, what the catch is, what we expect in return for this rescue. On the mining world of Kepler. 7. A hegemony overseer named Kextar was indeed wondering exactly that. In his experience, no one offered something for nothing, especially not aliens you'd never met before.
The answer is nothing, Sarah continued.
We don't want your resources, your technology, or your allegiance. We don't expect you to join our species or abandon your homes permanently. We're offering this help because it's the right thing to do, because no one should die alone in the dark when others can prevent it. Across the system, beings who had lived their entire lives in a galaxy where every interaction was transactional, where every kindness came with a price, tried to process what they were hearing. But I want you to understand something. Sarah's expression grew more serious. If you come aboard our ship, you become our responsibility. And humans take our responsibilities very seriously. We will protect you with our lives if necessary. We will fight for you. We will die for you, if that's what it takes. Not because we expect anything in return, but because that's what loyalty means to us. On the crystalline cities of Kepler. 1, 2, the collective consciousness known as the Harmony was debating among its million connected minds. They had analyzed the humans' words for deception patterns, for hidden meanings, for the subtle manipulations that characterized galactic diplomacy. They found none. That, in itself, was terrifying. The first shuttles began launching from Kepler, an hour later. Zerkel had made the decision for his world, and now millions of Zelthrians were streaming toward designated pickup points, carrying only what they could grab in minutes of preparation. Sarah materialized beside Zerkel through the Endeavor's advanced transporter system, causing the administrator to stumble backward in shock. Human teleportation technology was another impossibility casually demonstrated. "Administrator," Sarah said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I wanted to thank you personally for trusting us." Zerkel stared at the offered hand, then slowly reached out to clasp it. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive. Warm but not presumptuous. "Your people," he said slowly, "they truly do this for nothing? No trade agreements? No territorial concessions? No tributary relationships?" "Nothing," Sarah confirmed. "Though I hope that after this we might be friends." The concept of friendship between species was so alien to Zerkel that he actually had to search his language database for equivalent terms. The closest translation was beneficial alliance, but that seemed inadequate for what the human was describing. Meanwhile, in space above them, the Endeavor had become something that defied classification. The ship now resembled a vast city of interconnected modules, each one larger than the original vessel, all of them somehow contained within a space that looked no bigger than it had before. Beings from 17 worlds were streaming aboard, through matter transporters, gravitational lifts, and other technologies that made hardened space engineers weep with frustration at their impossibility. Dr. Amara Okafor, the ship's chief engineer, was orchestrating the evacuation with the help of her AI partner, Aria. Deck 47 through 63 are now accommodating the crystalline beings from Kepler. 1-2, she reported. "We've adjusted atmospheric composition and gravitational fields to match their homeworld exactly." "What about the gas-formed entities from Kepler 9? Asked Aria, her holographic form flickering between displays. Decks 70 through 80 to 5 have been converted to containment fields that mimic their natural environment. They're actually quite comfortable. Captain Torres was monitoring the overall evacuation progress when his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Jackson, called for his attention. "Captain, we have a problem. The Devourer advanced scouts have reached visual range and they're confused." On the main screen, the lead Devourer vessel hung in space like a malevolent cathedral of bone and metal. The species had evolved from predators so successful that they had consumed their entire homeworld's biosphere, then taken to space to continue their feast among the stars. They had never encountered prey that behaved like the humans. The Devourer ship mind, a collective consciousness formed from billions of consumed beings, was trying to process what it was observing. The prey ship had grown impossibly large, but it showed no weapons, projected no aggressive postures, and was actually moving slower to allow the smallest evacuation vessels to keep pace. This was not behavior the Devourers understood. "Captain Torres," came Sarah's voice over the comm system. "I'm reading massive biosignatures from that Devourer ship. How many beings do you think they've consumed?" Torres checked his senses. "Conservative estimate?" "Several billion over the past century. Maybe more." Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a quality that made every human on the ship stand a little straighter. Arya, how many beings have we successfully evacuated so far? 43,607,212 individuals from 14 different species. The AI responded immediately. And how many more are waiting for pickup? Approximately 6 million across the remaining 3 worlds that have accepted our assistance.
Sarah nodded slowly. Captain, change of plans.
We're not leaving anyone behind. Taurus felt something cold grip his heart. Sarah, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that the Devourers have been consuming innocent beings for centuries, and no one has ever made them stop. I'm thinking that maybe it's time someone did. On Kepler, Part D. Arba, Isaac, Textar, was still debating whether to trust the humans when his sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. 3 more Devourer ships had emerged from hyperspace, moving to flank the human vessel. The evacuation fleet was trapped. This is why we don't trust aliens, he muttered to his aide. The humans led us into a trap. But even as he said it, he was watching the tactical display, and what he saw didn't match his assumption. The human ship wasn't trying to escape. Instead, it was moving to interpose itself between the Devourers and the evacuation shuttles still ferrying beings from the surface. Sir, his aide whispered, I think the humans are trying to protect us. The lead Devourer ship finally opened communications, its voice a harmony of consumed souls speaking in unison. Unknown vessel, you will surrender your cargo and submit to consumption. Resistance will only delay the inevitable. Sarah's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every being in the system could hear her words. This is Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth. The beings under our protection are not cargo. They are people with names, families, and dreams. And as long as there's a single human alive, you will not touch them. The Devourer ship mind processed this response for 3.7 seconds before concluding that the prey species was either malfunctioning or insane. You offer yourself and your species to preserve beings that are not your own genetic line. This behavior serves no evolutionary purpose. Explain your logic. Sarah looked around the bridge, seeing the faces of her crew. These people had followed her into impossible danger, not for glory or profit, but because it was right. In that moment, she felt the weight of everything humanity had ever believed about honor, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to be human. You want to understand our logic? She asked, her voice carrying across the void to a ship full of predators who had forgotten what it meant to create rather than consume. Our logic is simple. We choose to be more than just another species fighting for survival. We choose to be worthy of the universe we live in. And sometimes, that means standing between monsters and innocent people, even when the odds are impossible. The Devourer ship mind spent another 5.2 seconds processing this response before concluding that immediate consumption was required. These prey beings were clearly malfunctioning and might spread their defective thinking to other worlds. Begin the harvest, it commanded its weapon systems. But as the first energy beams lanced toward the Endeavor, something happened that had never occurred in the Devourer's 1,000-year reign of terror across the galaxy. The human ship fought back. The energy beams from the lead Devourer ship struck the Endeavor's shields with the force of collapsing stars. These same weapons had shattered planetary defense grids, carved continents from worlds, and reduced entire space fleets to glowing plasma. They had never failed to penetrate their target. Until now. The human ship's shields didn't just absorb the energy, they seemed to drink it, growing brighter and more solid with each impact. The rainbow aurora that danced across the Endeavor's protective barrier began to pulse in patterns that defied all known physics. Impossible, transmitted the Devourer ship mind, its collective consciousness experiencing something it had not felt in millennia: confusion. Energy absorption rates exceed theoretical maximums. Shield regeneration is increasing rather than decreasing under sustained fire. Captain Torres was monitoring the shield status from the bridge, his expression grim with satisfaction. Lou, report on the reactive defense grid. Working perfectly, Captain, replied the chief physicist. Their weapon energy is being converted directly into shield strength through the quantum feedback loops. The more they shoot at us, the stronger we get. Lieutenant Morrison looked up from her communication station with wonder in her voice. Captain, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from across the system. Every species down there is asking the same question, which is, how are we doing this? Sarah stepped forward, her diplomatic training warring with the tactical situation. She had never expected her first contact mission to become a space battle, but here they were. Open a channel to the entire system, including the Devourer ships.
Her image appeared on screens across 17 worlds and 4 enemy vessels simultaneously.
Behind her, the bridge of the Endeavour showed calm professionalism despite the ongoing bombardment. People of Kepler system and visitors, she began, her voice steady despite the ship shuddering under enemy fire. You're witnessing something that humans call applied stubbornness. We designed our ships not just to survive, but to protect. Every weapon fired at us makes us stronger because we refuse to let innocent people die on our watch. Administrator Zirkel was watching from the surface of Kepler. 4. His people still streaming into evacuation shuttles, despite the battle raging overhead. She's insane, he whispered to his aide. They're completely outnumbered, outgunned, and they're giving us a lecture on philosophy. But even as he said it, he was watching the tactical display in amazement. The human ship was actually growing brighter under sustained fire, its shields expanding to protect not just itself but the evacuation fleet as well. The Devourer ship mind was reaching similar conclusions, but with growing frustration. It commanded its weapons to increase power, cycling through energy types that had proven effective against every known defensive system in the galaxy. Plasma beams, quantum disruptors, gravity waves, exotic particle streams. Nothing worked. The human shields adapted to each attack, becoming more effective against the next. This is not possible, it transmitted to its companion ships. No species develops this level of defensive technology. The evolutionary pressure favors offensive capabilities. The second Devourer vessel moved to flank the Endeavour, adding its firepower to the barrage. Then the third. Then the fourth. Soon, the human ship was at the center of a storm of energy that should have vaporized entire star systems. And it held. Sarah, Dr. Webb said quietly from his position at the science station, the evacuations are only 60% complete. We need more time. Sarah nodded, then did something that made every human on the bridge smile with predatory anticipation. Captain Torres, I think it's time we showed our guests what human shields are really designed to do. Torres's grin was sharp enough to cut steel. With pleasure, Ambassador. Dr. Liu, activate the shield inversion protocols. Aye, Captain. Switching from absorption mode to reflection mode. In 3, 2, 1. Mark. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. The Endeavour's shields, which had been absorbing and storing the massive energy output of 4 Devourer ships, suddenly reversed their polarity. Every joule of energy that had been fired at the human ship over the past 30 minutes was returned to sender in the span of 3 seconds. The lead Devourer vessel, a biomechanical nightmare the size of a small moon, simply ceased to exist. The concentrated return of its own firepower, multiplied by quantum resonance effects, tore through its organic hull like tissue paper. The second ship lost its entire forward section, its ship mind shrieking in digital agony as billions of its component consciousnesses were scattered to the void. The third and fourth ships, faced with irrefutable evidence that their prey was actually an apex predator in disguise, did something that Devourers had never done in their species' history. They retreated. Unknown prey species transmitted the damaged second ship, its voice distorted by static and existential confusion. Your defensive capabilities are unprecedented. We withdraw to analyze this new threat paradigm. Sarah stepped forward to the communications array, her expression showing something that the Devourer's senses couldn't interpret, but which made their remaining ship minds deeply uncomfortable.
You're not withdrawing, she said quietly.
You're running, and you're never coming back to this system or any system under human protection. Because now you know what happens when you threaten people we've sworn to defend. The surviving Devourer ships vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the first defeat their species had experienced in over a millennium. In the silence that followed, evacuation shuttles continued their work, but now every being in the system was staring at the human ship with something approaching religious awe. They actually did it, whispered Overseer Kekstar from his mining world. They drove off the Devourers. 4 ships. 4. His aide was checking the tactical recordings, her voice filled with disbelief. Sir, according to our sensors, the humans never fired a single offensive weapon. They defeated the Devourers using only defensive systems. Dr. Amara Okafor was overseeing the completion of the evacuation when Arya materialized beside her. Doctor, we're receiving surrender offers from 7 different pirate fleets in neighboring systems. Apparently word of our demonstration is spreading rapidly. Surrender offers? Amara asked in confusion. They're requesting permission to become human protectorates rather than risk facing our terrible defensive weapons in combat, Arya explained, with something that sounded like digital amusement. On the bridge, Captain Torres was dealing with a different problem. Sarah, we have incoming transmissions from the Galactic Council. They want to negotiate. Sarah looked at the tactical display, where the last of the evacuation shuttles were docking with the Endeavour. 51 million beings from 17 different worlds, all safe aboard their ship, all trusting humanity to protect them until they could find new homes or return to rebuild their old ones. Tell the Council they can wait, she said firmly. We have people to relocate. But even as she said it, she was thinking about what came next. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in a way that no one could ignore. They had demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist, showed loyalty that seemed impossible, and proven that sometimes the right thing to do was also the most terrifying thing you could do to your enemies. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just treasure loyalty, they enforced it. 3 days later, the Endeavour had successfully relocated 47 million beings to safe worlds, with the remaining 4 million choosing to accompany the humans to Earth as honored guests. Administrator Zerkel was among those who decided to see humanity's homeworld for himself. I still don't understand, he said to Sarah, as they stood in one of the ship's vast observation lounges, watching Earth grow larger through the viewports. Your people spent enormous resources, risked your only contact ship, and nearly declared war on the most feared species in the galaxy. All for strangers you had never met. Sarah smiled as she watched her blue-green world rotating slowly below them. Zerkel, can I tell you something about human history? Of course. For most of our evolution, we were prey animals. We were hunted by things bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than we were. We survived not because we were the toughest or the fastest, but because we learned to protect each other. When one of us was threatened, all of us responded. It didn't matter if you were from our tribe or not. If you were in trouble and we could help, we did. She turned to look at the Zelthrian administrator with eyes that held depths he was only beginning to understand. That instinct never went away. It just got bigger. Now our tribe includes anyone who needs help, anywhere in the galaxy. And you know what the really interesting part is? What's that?
The more people we protect, the stronger we become.
Every species that trusts us, every world that calls us friend, every alliance we honor, they all make humanity harder to defeat. Because when you attack people we've sworn to defend, you're not just fighting us. You're fighting everyone who believes that loyalty means something. Zerkel was quiet for a long moment, processing implications that stretched far beyond his ability to fully comprehend. Sarah, he said finally, what exactly are your people planning to do with this galaxy? Sarah's smile was warm, genuine and absolutely terrifying to anyone who had spent their life in a universe where power came from the ability to betray others before they betrayed you. We're going to fix it. 6 months after the Kepler incident, as galactic historians would later call it, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The change wasn't visible on star charts or trade routes. It was something deeper, more profound. It was the slow dawn of realization that loyalty wasn't weakness but the most terrifying strategic advantage any species could possess. Administrator Zerkel, now serving as humanity's first alien diplomatic advisor, stood in the Earth Council chambers watching Sarah Chen address representatives from 43 different species. The room itself was a testament to human engineering philosophy. Instead of the traditional hierarchy of the Galactic Council, where seating arrangements reflected power dynamics, the human chamber was a circle where every delegate sat at exactly the same level. The hegemony of suns has formally requested our protection for their merchant fleets. Sarah was reporting to the assembled delegates. That makes the sixth major power to join what they're calling the Loyalty Network. Zerkel still struggled with that concept. The Loyalty Network wasn't an empire, wasn't a federation, and wasn't even a traditional alliance. It was something entirely new in galactic politics. A group of species bound together not by conquest or treaties of convenience, but by the simple promise that humanity would protect them, and they would protect each other. The terms remain the same for all new members, continued Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's chief xenopolitical strategist. We provide defensive protection, technological assistance, and conflict mediation. In exchange, member species agree to help defend other network members and to resolve disputes through negotiation rather than warfare. Delegate Crix Toll of the Silicon Collective raised one of her crystalline appendages. What of species that refuse to join but continue aggressive expansion toward network members? Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. We've had 3 such cases in the past month: the Crimson Hegemony, the Void Reapers, and the Iron Throne Empire. Each was given the standard warning that attacks on network members would be considered attacks on humanity.
And their responses?
Asked Dr. Morin, representing the aquatic deep-stream nations. The Crimson Hegemony agreed to arbitration. The Void Reapers, well, they learned what happened to the Devourers at Kepler. As for the Iron Throne Empire, Sarah paused. They chose to test our resolve. The silence in the chamber was profound. Every delegate had heard rumors about what had happened to the Iron Throne's invasion fleet, but few knew the full details. Dr. Webb, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist and surprisingly effective military advisor, activated a holographic display showing the Sigma Draconis system. 3 weeks ago, the Iron Throne launched a full-scale invasion of the Harmony Collective's core worlds. 200 ships, including their flagship dreadnought Eternal Conquest. The hologram zoomed in to show ship deployments and battle formations. The Harmony had requested emergency assistance, and the Endeavour was the closest ship capable of responding. Travel time, 4 days at maximum burn. Delegate Zorkel leaned forward. Even after months of working with humans, their tactical thinking continued to amaze him. A single ship against 200? Actually, Doctor, Webb said with a slight smile, it was closer to 1,500 by the time we arrived. The Iron Throne had called in reinforcements from 3 allied empires. The hologram showed the Endeavour dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, where a massive fleet was systematically destroying Harmony defensive installations while preparing to bombard civilian population centers. The Iron Throne Admiral Vex Moran immediately demanded our surrender. Dr. Webb continued. His exact words were, "One ship against 1,500 is not courage, it is stupidity." What did Captain Torres respond? Asked Dr. Yuki, who had been promoted to head of Human-Alien Cultural Exchange Programs. He said, "You're right. One ship would be unfair. To you." The hologram shifted to show what happened next. The Endeavour had indeed come alone, but as it entered the system, something extraordinary occurred. Space itself seemed to fold and twist around the human vessel, and when reality stabilized, the single ship had become a fleet. Not a fleet of ships, a fleet of the same ship. Quantum multiplication, explained Dr. Malte. Liu, who had joined the briefing via holographic projection from her laboratory on Luna. We've learned to exist in multiple parallel dimensions simultaneously. Each version of the Endeavour is equally real, equally functional, and equally committed to protecting the Harmony Collective. The battle that followed lasted 17 minutes. 1,500 Iron Throne vessels found themselves facing 47 versions of the Endeavour, each one capable of adapting its defenses to any weapon system in real time. When the smoke cleared, the Iron Throne fleet was floating dead in space, completely disabled, but with every crew member alive and unharmed. We could have destroyed them, Sarah said quietly. Our weapons technology is significant, but we don't fight to kill, we fight to protect. The Iron Throne crews were returned to their home systems with a simple message. Which was? Asked Delegate Morin. That loyalty is a choice, not a weakness. And we choose to be loyal to anyone who needs protection. The briefing continued for another hour, but Zerkel found his attention wandering to the implications of what he was hearing. In 6 months, humanity had created something unprecedented in galactic history. A military alliance based not on mutual fear or shared enemies, but on shared values. After the formal session ended, Zerkel found himself walking through the gardens of New Geneva with Sarah, discussing the growing challenges of managing an interstellar network of allies. The Galactic Council is getting nervous, Sarah was saying as they paused beside a fountain where water danced in impossible spirals through localized gravity fields. 43 species have left their membership to join us, including some of their most powerful military forces. Can you blame them for being nervous? Zerkel replied. 6 months ago, they were the ultimate authority in galactic politics. Now they're watching their entire power structure collapse because you've proven that cooperation works better than coercion. Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching the water dance. Marcus thinks we're moving too fast. He says we're destabilizing thousands of years of galactic order. Are you? Probably, Sarah admitted. But, Zerkel, I've seen the Galactic Council's idea of order. It's built on the assumption that betrayal is inevitable, that loyalty is temporary, and that the strong should exploit the weak. That's not order, that's organized chaos. And what's your alternative? Sarah turned to face him, and in her eyes, Zerkel saw something that still amazed him after all these months. It was hope, but not naive hope. It was the hard, tested hope of people who had faced impossible odds and won through sheer stubborn determination to do the right thing. Simple, she said. We're proving that loyalty creates strength, not weakness. Every species that trusts us becomes safer. Every world that joins the network becomes more prosperous. Every conflict we resolve through negotiation instead of warfare makes the galaxy a little more peaceful. And if the Council tries to stop you? Sarah's smile was warm but absolutely implacable. Then they'll discover what happens when you threaten people we've sworn to protect. All of them. That evening, Zirkel was working late in his Earth-provided quarters when his communication array chimed with an incoming priority message from the Zelthrian home system. His superior, High Administrator Velkar, appeared in holographic form, her expression unreadable. Zirkel, the Council has made a formal demand for your return to Zelthra Prime, she said without preamble. They claim you've been compromised by human influence and are no longer representing Zelthrian interests. Zirkel felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had known this was coming. His reports to the home system had been increasingly positive about humanity and critical of Council policies. And your response? That depends on your next report. The Council is preparing a formal ultimatum to Earth. Join the existing galactic order or face the consequences. What consequences could they possibly threaten that would concern humanity? Zirkel asked. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything in Council arsenals. Velkar's expression grew grim. They're not planning to attack humanity directly. They're planning to attack everyone humanity has sworn to protect, simultaneously. The implication hit Zirkel like a physical blow. They want to force humanity to choose between spreading their forces impossibly thin or abandoning their allies.
Exactly. And if humanity chooses to defend everyone, the Council believes they can overwhelm human forces through sheer numbers.
If humanity chooses to abandon some allies to save others, the loyalty network collapses and proves that human promises are as empty as everyone else's. Zirkel closed his eyes, processing the strategic brilliance and moral bankruptcy of the Council's plan. How long do I have? The ultimatum will be delivered in 72 hours. Your final report is due 6 hours before that. After the connection ended, Zirkel sat in his quarters staring out at the lights of New Geneva, contemplating the most important decision of his life. He could return to Zelthra Prime, resume his position in the traditional power structure, and watch as the galaxy returned to its ancient patterns of betrayal and exploitation. Or he could do something that no Zelthrian in history had ever done: choose loyalty over survival. The next morning, he found Sarah in the Earth Council chambers, reviewing intelligence reports about Council fleet movements. She looked up as he entered, her expression immediately concerned. Zirkel, you look like you haven't slept.
I haven't, he replied.
Sarah, I need to tell you something about the Council's plans. She listened without interruption as he explained the ultimatum, the strategic thinking behind it, and the impossible choice that humanity was about to face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. 72 hours, she said finally. That's not much time to prepare for a galaxy-wide conflict. You're not seriously considering trying to defend everyone, Zirkel said in disbelief. The mathematics alone make it impossible. The Council can field 50,000 ships across 100 systems simultaneously. Sarah stood up and walked to the chamber's main display, which showed a real-time map of the loyalty network. 43 species across 217 worlds, all trusting humanity to keep its promises. Zirkel, can I tell you something about human mathematics? What do you mean? We've never been very good at accepting impossible odds as an excuse for not doing the right thing, she said, her voice carrying a quality that made the air itself seem to vibrate with potential. The Council thinks 50,000 ships is an insurmountable number, but they've made one critical error in their calculations. Which is? Sarah turned to face him, and in her expression, Zirkel saw the same terrifying certainty he had witnessed at Kepler. They're assuming we're still fighting alone. The Galactic Council's ultimatum arrived exactly 72 hours later, transmitted simultaneously to every network member and broadcast across all public communication channels. High Councillor Thax Noel, a being so ancient that its crystalline form had grown to the size of a small building, delivered the message with the authority of 3,000 years of unquestioned power. Humans of Earth, the message began. Your disruption of galactic order ends now. You have 72 standard hours to dissolve your so-called loyalty network, return all member species to Council authority, and submit to integration into existing power structures. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action against all network worlds simultaneously. Sarah Chen stood in the Earth Council chambers, surrounded by delegates from 43 species, watching as their faces showed every emotion from terror to determination to resignation. She could feel the weight of their trust, their hope, their absolute faith that somehow humanity would find a way to protect them all. "They have 57,000 ships now," reported Dr. Groove. Webb from his tactical station. "Intelligence indicates they've pulled in favors from every species in their sphere of influence. It's the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history." "And us?" asked Sarah. Captain Torres, who had been working around the clock to coordinate defensive preparations, looked exhausted but grimly satisfied. "We have 47 Endeavour-class vessels completed, with another dozen coming online in the next 24 hours. Each ship can quantum multiply into a fleet of up to 50 identical vessels, giving us approximately 3,000 effective units. The mathematics were stark and undeniable. Even with their advanced technology, humanity was outnumbered nearly 20 to 1. There's something else," added Dr. Torture. Leo, from her position at the science station. "Our intelligence network has detected massive energy buildups at 17 key strategic points throughout Council space. They're not just planning a military assault, they're preparing to use planet killers." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Planet killers were weapons of absolute destruction, capable of shattering entire worlds. They had been banned by galactic treaty for over 1,000 years, so they're willing to commit genocide to maintain their power, said Dr. Vasquez quietly. They'll destroy entire civilizations to prove that loyalty is weakness. Delegate Crix Towel of the Silicon Collective raised one of her crystalline appendages. "Ambassador Chen, my people wish you to know that we understand the impossible situation you face. No one could protect everyone against these odds. If you must choose which worlds to defend, we will not think less of you." Similar statements came from delegates around the chamber. Species after species offering to release humanity from promises that couldn't possibly be kept, showing a grace and understanding that made Sarah's heart ache. But as she listened to their words, she felt something else rising inside her. It was the same feeling she had experienced at Kepler, watching the council debate which civilizations to abandon. It was the same fire that had driven humanity to reach for the stars despite every obstacle, every limitation, every expert who said it was impossible. It was the fundamental human refusal to accept that good people should suffer when it could be prevented. "Thank you," she said quietly when the last delegate had spoken. "All of you, but I need to tell you something about human promises. When we give our word, mathematics don't matter, odds don't matter. The sensible thing to do doesn't matter. We keep our promises, period." She activated the chamber's main display, showing the galaxy-wide distribution of network worlds and incoming council fleets. Red markers indicated 57,000 enemy ships moving toward targets across hundreds of light-years of space. "Dr. Liu, status on Project Unity." The chief physicist's face showed something between excitement and terror. "Theoretical frameworks are solid, but we've never tested anything on this scale. The quantum resonance cascade could work exactly as predicted, or it could tear a hole in space-time itself," finished Captain Torres grimly. "We discussed this, Sarah. The risks are enormous." "What risks?" asked Zurkel, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Dr. Liu brought up a new set of displays, showing complex mathematical models that hurt to look at directly. Project Unity is based on the quantum entanglement principles that let our ships multiply themselves across parallel dimensions. But instead of creating multiple versions of one ship, we're attempting to create quantum links between every ship in our fleet across all dimensions simultaneously. "What would that accomplish?" asked Dr. Morin. "It would mean that every ship in our fleet would exist in every battle at the same time," Sarah explained. 59 ships becomes 59 ships, in every engagement, everywhere, simultaneously. We wouldn't be dividing our forces, we'd be multiplying them across all possible battlefields. The delegates stared at her in stunned silence. What she was describing wasn't just tactically impossible, it violated several fundamental laws of physics. The power requirements alone would drain our entire system's energy grid, protested Delegate Tixner. "And the quantum strain on your crews would likely kill all of us," Sarah acknowledged calmly. "Liu estimates a 60% chance of survival for human crews attempting to maintain that level of quantum coherence across multiple dimensions." "Then you can't possibly," began Zorkel. "We can," Sarah interrupted, "and we will. Because that's what loyalty means. It means you don't abandon people when things get difficult. It means you don't calculate acceptable losses when dealing with friends. It means that when you promise to protect someone, you keep that promise even if it kills you. The chamber erupted in arguments as delegates from 43 species tried to convince humanity not to commit suicide on their behalf. But Sarah wasn't listening to the protests. She was watching the chronometer count down toward the moment when the largest military force in galactic history would begin its assault on everyone she had sworn to protect. 20 to 6 hours remaining. Captain Torres activated his personal communicator. All human crews to battle stations. Initiate Project Unity on my mark. Across the Sol system, 59 vessels of impossible design began to pulse with energies that made nearby stars seem dim by comparison. Each ship was a marvel of engineering that combined human determination with technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Each crew was composed of volunteers who had understood the odds and chosen duty over survival. The quantum resonance began slowly, a harmonic vibration that connected ship to ship across vast distances. Dr. Bai. Liu monitored the process from the primary control station, her readouts showing energy levels climbing toward theoretical maximums. Quantum coherence at 40% and rising, she reported. No signs of dimensional instability yet. On the bridge of the Lieb Endeavour, Captain Torres was feeling the first effects of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. His consciousness was stretching across parallel versions of himself, each one commanding a ship in a different potential battle. It was like being pulled apart at the molecular level while remaining perfectly intact. "Sarah," he said through gritted teeth, "are you sure about this?" She was standing beside him, her own form flickering slightly as quantum effects began to affect everyone aboard. "Absolutely not. But I'm sure about something else. I'm sure that when the history of this galaxy is written, it won't say that humans calculated the acceptable number of friends to sacrifice to save themselves." The quantum resonance hit 70% coherence, and suddenly every human in the fleet could feel every other human across all possible dimensions. They were one crew in 59 ships, 59 crews in one ship. A single consciousness spread across the breadth of space itself. And in that moment of connection, something unexpected happened. The aliens aboard the ships, the delegates, the refugees, the advisors, the friends who had chosen to stand with humanity despite the odds. They began to resonate as well. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Liu, staring at her instruments in shock. "Non-human consciousness patterns are synchronizing with our quantum field. They're becoming part of the network." Zirkel felt it first as a warmth spreading through his mind, then as a sudden expansion of awareness that let him see through 1,000 different eyes across the galaxy. He could feel the determination of human crews, but also the desperate hope of Zelthrian refugees, the crystalline unity of Silicon Collective members, the fluid courage of deep-stream nations. "We're not just quantum-linked," he gasped. "We're actually united." The effect spread beyond the ships themselves. On network worlds across the galaxy, beings who had never seen a human face felt the connection forming. Children in refugee camps, miners on distant asteroids, scholars in ancient libraries, all of them suddenly part of something larger than themselves. The Galactic Council's warfleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly on schedule. 57,000 ships emerging simultaneously across 200 systems to find their targets waiting for them. What they encountered defied every assumption about warfare, physics, and the nature of reality itself. In the Zelthrian home system, Admiral Korthvel commanded a fleet of 3,000 ships against what intelligence reported as a single human vessel. The Endeavour hung in space before them, looking impossibly small against the backdrop of his armada. "Surrender now or be destroyed," he transmitted to the human ship. The response came not from the ship's captain, but from Ambassador Sarah Chen herself, her image appearing on every screen in his fleet simultaneously. "Admiral," she said with perfect calm, "you're about to learn something important about loyalty. It's not just a human concept anymore." And then the impossible happened. The single human ship began to multiply, not into dozens of parallel versions, but into thousands. Each multiplication wasn't just a copy of the Endeavour, but a unique vessel crewed by beings from every species in the loyalty network, all connected by quantum bonds that made them literally unstoppable. But more than that, Admiral Korthvel realized that the humans weren't alone. Every ship that appeared was crewed by mixed species working in perfect harmony, their different capabilities combining into something greater than the sum of their parts. The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 seconds. Across the galaxy, in 200 different systems, the same scene played out. The Council's war fleets, the largest military force ever assembled, encountered something that had never existed before in galactic history. A truly unified defensive network that fought not for conquest or dominance, but for the simple principle that good people deserved protection. When the smoke cleared, 57,000 Council ships were floating dead in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels completely disabled. The planet-killer weapons had been neutralized before they could fire. Their targeting systems turned against the ships that carried them. High Councilor Thex Null, monitoring the battle from the Council's ancient stronghold, experienced something that its species had not felt in 3 millennia. Fear. How? It transmitted to its remaining subordinates. How did primitives with barely 60 ships defeat the combined might of the Galactic Order? The answer came not from its advisors, but from Ambassador Sarah Chen, whose image appeared on the Council's most secure communication channels. "Because you made a fundamental miscalculation," she said simply. "You assumed that loyalty was something we kept to ourselves. But loyalty, real loyalty, is contagious. It spreads from person to person, species to species, world to world, until it becomes something unstoppable." Behind her, the Council could see beings from dozens of species working together with seamless coordination, their different abilities and perspectives combining into a harmony that made their ancient crystalline minds ache with incomprehension. "The old galaxy is over," Sarah continued. "The galaxy where the strong prey on the weak, where betrayal is good business, where friendship is just a temporary alliance of convenience. From now on, anyone who threatens innocence, anyone who breaks their word, anyone who thinks power comes from making others afraid, they'll have to answer to all of us. And if we refuse to accept this, new order?" Thexnor asked, though something in its ancient consciousness already knew the answer. Sarah's smile was warm, genuine, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "Then you'll discover what happens when a galaxy finally learns that some things are worth fighting for." In the years that followed, the transformation of galactic civilization would become the stuff of legend. The Council's power structure, built on 3,000 years of calculated betrayal and convenient alliances, crumbled within a single generation as species after species chose loyalty over fear. The loyalty network grew from 43 members to over 800, encompassing nearly every inhabited system in known space. Wars became almost unthinkable when both sides of any conflict were connected by quantum bonds that made them literally feel each other's pain. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to do what they had always done: keep their promises, protect their friends, and prove that the galaxy could be better than it was. Administrator Zerkel, now serving as the first Director General of the Galactic Loyalty Council, often reflected on that moment when everything changed. He would think about Sarah Chen's words in the Earth Council chambers, about the choice between calculation and courage, between practical survival and principled sacrifice. And he would smile, knowing that sometimes the most important choice any civilization could make was simple: the choice to be worthy of the universe they lived in. The galaxy had learned, at last, what humans had always known. Loyalty wasn't just a treasured value, it was the foundation of everything worth building.